After World War II, an ad from the American Unitarian Association appeared in many newspapers asking, "Are you a Unitarian without knowing it?" The denominations hadn't merged at that time, and so it was just a Unitarian Association that did this. And the ad suggested that you might be a Unitarian if you believe that the Bible is an inspiring human document, but not the literal Word of God. Or that people are not condemned by original sin, but are inherently capable of improvement. Development of character is more important than the accepting of religious creeds, or the purpose of religion is to help us live this life well, rather than prepare for the afterlife. Now, these are some pretty heavy questions that just appear in the newspaper. But they put these ads in the newspaper and then asked people to contact Boston. And if 6 people in a town contacted Boston, they would say, "Hey, there's 6 of you. 6 people who think like you in your town. Why don't you meet and form a congregation?" Now, this congregation started in a similar way. They put the word out that they were going to meet, and they didn't do it through the UUA. Some people just wanted to start a congregation here, and they put the word out, and they started meeting in each other's homes, and you have grown over 20 years to this. 30% of the UUA's current congregations, 323, started as fellowships during the 2 decades after World War II. Some are still small and lay-led, and others have evolved into full-service congregations with buildings, ministers, and religious education programs. Fellowships introduced our religion to thousands of people and hundreds of communities. So some of our biggest churches started in the same way this church started. River was just people meeting in homes. Winston-Salem started the same way. This was a real bold step for Unitarians because it was an evangelical outreach. They actually asked people to come join us. And that's something that isn't deep in our religious character. I think many of us have experienced people trying to abuse us by pushing religion upon us, that we never think to just tell people about what's going on. That we don't want to be pushy about religion because we have hated when people were pushy about religion with us. But I think of my wife, Gail, whose cousin was in the first interracial children's choir in the nation at the UU Church in Chicago. And she had been there many times. And when I said, "Well, I think I'm a Unitarian, I want to attend this church with you, I want you to come to church with me," she said, "I'm not doing church." I said, "Just once." And she came, and she said, "Oh, I've been here before." She had been there several times, 20 years earlier, seeing her cousin singing the social justice choir, and never at one of those concerts did they say, "Please come on Sunday. This is also a church." And so that is the type of thing where you miss people, because we just don't do the simple thing of, "What did you do this weekend?" "Well, I went to church." That we are so reticent about talking about who we are that it often comes out sideways. And when people are uncomfortable talking about something, it usually comes out in the form of jokes. That's why most jokes are sex jokes or they're ethnic jokes, because people are really nervous about these topics, and so they try to enter into it sideways through jokes. And so there is on the internet an amazing number of UU jokes. And these jokes tell the truth about us in some level, and sometimes they're self-deprecating, and sometimes they go into the category I say is self-defecating, that they really treat ourselves really poorly. And the first category is that idea that UUs are not really a religion. There's the thing of Unitarians believe in one God at most, because there are so many people who did not believe. But then in the 80s and 90s, we started entertaining more people who came here that were interested in earth-centered religions and pagan gods. And so now that we have the sixth source, people say people believe in God more or less. A Unitarian Universalist prayed, "Dear God, if there is a God, please save my soul if I have a soul." What do you get when you cross a UU with a Jehovah's Witness? Someone who comes knocking at your door for no apparent reason. A Unitarian is just a Quaker with attention deficit disorder. Or I say a Quaker who just can't shut their mouth. Person from a mainstream, not Protestant denomination said, "I hear that you allow all sorts of weirdos in your church. Atheists, Buddhists, pagans." Person B was a Unitarian Universalist. "Yeah, we allow Christians too. We're very open-minded." A scandalized fundamentalist was talking to a UU atheist and said, "You really don't believe in God? Why not?" And the UU replied, "For the same reason you don't believe in all the other gods." A fundamentalist Christian asserted to a UU, "I hear you deny the divinity of Christ." "That's untrue," said the UU. "We don't deny the divinity of anyone." For members of any religion, to have a few doubts is normal. To have many doubts is a crisis of faith. To have constant doubt is a conversion to Unitarian Universalism. You might be a UU if you think the Holy Trinity is reduce, reuse, and recycle. You consider the 10 suggestions rather than the 10 commandments. The only time Jesus is mentioned in church is when somebody stubs their toe. You think a holy day of obligation is your turn to do the coffee. And you think whatever is a valid theological point. Because of our willingness to pursue many avenues of truth, some people believe, including many UUs, that we can believe in anything. But that's not true. UUs believe that each person has a truth, and we get closer to that truth by listening to each other and working together. We believe in deeds, not creeds. Actions speak louder than words. The Christian scripture of James 2:14 through 18 gives a good flavor to what we are about. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If you say to them, "Go in peace, keep warm and well fed," but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if not accompanied by action, is dead. Someone will say, "You have faith, but I have deeds." Or "Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds." Oftentimes when I'm trying to explain Unitarian Universalism to my Christian colleagues, I go to a parable that Jesus told about two sons. And the father told one son to go and work in the field, and he said yes, but never quite got around to it. Asked his second son, and he said no, but eventually got around to doing it. And I tell my Christian brethren that UUs are like that second son. You're never going to pin us down to say, yes, we absolutely believe this. But you will find us doing the work when needed. Another category of UU humor is that UUs are argumentative. And this is partially true if anybody's ever attended a committee meeting. Visitors on tour of heaven noticed a group of Unitarian Universalists who were arguing about whether or not they were really there. There's a joke, which I don't find true, because every congregation I've been in, I've had good UU singers. But the joke goes, "Why can't UUs sing well?" Because they're always reading ahead to see if they agree with the words. What are the UU sacraments? Doubt, argument, and voting. Arguing with a Unitarian Universalist is like mud wrestling with a pig. Pretty soon you realize the pig likes it. What do you get if you put two Unitarian Universalists together? 3 opinions. 2 UUs were sitting in the back of the room at a particularly raucous congregational meeting, and one turned to the other and said, "Nobody will mistake us for an organized religion." You might be UU if you have lobbied for transgendered bathrooms, if you have protested a nativity scene. You can't decide which shoes to wear because Crocs are synthetic and Birkenstocks have animal hide. Our argumentative reputation has some basis in fact. Unitarian Universalists arose out of the Protestant movement. And the root word of Protestant is protest. And while some churches grew into mainline denominations, Unitarians and Universalists kept on protesting, kept on agitating that things can be better. We have a history of being abolitionists, feminists, civil rights activists. We were present at the founding of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, the American Civil Liberties Union, Planned Parenthood, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. We have argued for evolution, gay marriage, and the separation of church and state. Because we are activists, we often point out the way that the world could be better. We seem unable to shut up and just let things be. But we must learn to disagree without being disagreeable. People get defensive when you tell them they are wrong. Let us speak our truth without insulting the inherent worth and dignity of anybody. If we believe we have a better way, let us be a good example and show that example and invite others to join us. Another category of UU humor that has some truth is that UUs are elitist. According to Wikipedia, a liberal elite is a political stigma used to describe politically left-leaning people whose education had traditionally opened the doors to influence and affluence. It is commonly used as a pejorative implication that the peoples who claim to support the rights of the working class are members themselves of the upper class or upper middle class, and therefore out of touch with the real needs of the people they claim to support. As a polemical term, it has been used to refer to the political positions diverse as secularism, environmentalism, feminism, and other positions associated with the left. Any of you who have bristled at me using Wikipedia as a source have just identified yourself as part of the educated elite. In the 19th century, Unitarians and Universalists had similar theological positions, but Unitarian preachers were Harvard educated and used intellectual argument to make the case that reason made man the reflection of the image of God. Universalism was more emotional and charismatic. They even had traveling preachers who held tent meetings. They emphasized the love of God. Thomas Starr King, who was a minister in both denominations at various times in his career, is credited with describing the differences between 19th century Universalists and Unitarians. He said, "Universalists believe that God is too good to damn men. Unitarians believe that men are too good to be damned." What is the definition of UU diversity? Multiple colors of Priuses in the parking lot. You might be a UU if you do not believe a sermon is good unless you are unable to understand half of it. You believe that spiritual practice means learning to clap on 2 and 4. SAT scores are an appropriate joy and concern, and water communion is a good time to talk about your trip to Europe. Sex is not a taboo topic, but money is. The elitist tag does have some merit. People who ask questions are more likely to have doubts and more likely to find a home in our churches. And because many of us came to question religion while we were in college, we mistakenly think that one has to go to college to become a UU. Unitarian means God is one. Universalism means all are saved. That is simple enough to say and profound enough to keep us wondering for the rest of our lives. God is one, all are saved. 2 sentences consist of 1-syllable words. We create barriers by making our religion seem more complicated than it needs to be. I have this t-shirt that we had at the Winston-Salem Church. And it says Unitarian, one love. Because while Unitarians may disagree about whether or not God exists, we are mostly arguing whether God is love or whether love is God. What is ultimate? And so instead of saying one God, I said one love. And universalist means for all. And this is a very simple thing to say when talking to others about what Unitarian Universalist means. You could have that pithy answer, like, Someone will say I've personally turned my life over to Jesus. That's a nice quick answer. You don't have to go into your whole history. You could say Unitarian Universalism means one love for all. I had this stole made upon my ordination, and I call it my billboard stole. Someone before the service said, "Excuse me, sir, what church are you with?" Because I knew when I was out in public, I wanted people to know that the UUs were present. Because I remember when I was in Racine, Wisconsin, and Tony Larson was my mentor as I was doing an internship in his church. We went to protest the protesters that were trying to shut down an abortion clinic. And Tony was even bold enough, we were all wearing shirts with a collar. And Tony was bold enough to even go to the other side with a sign saying "Right to Life," and made the paper that said, "Man pretending to be a priest advocates abortion." And there was that idea that because our religious position is not conservative or excluding, doesn't mean it's fake. It is a more real position. And I wanted people to know that when I was supporting women's rights or immigrants' rights, that our church was showing up. And this congregation has done the same thing, wearing their t-shirts to various events when we've done things. And it's part of just being very present in the community and saying, this is our way, and it's a good way, and being proud of it. It's also said that UUs are eccentric. A traveler couldn't find the local Unitarian Universalist church. After looking in the center town and the suburbs and in the countryside, and came across a farmer and asked, "Am I too far out for the UU church?" And the farmer replied, "Nobody is too far out for that church." And I remember a story of someone who was in Colorado, and she was in the laundry mat after just moving to the city, and went and said, Careful. Oh no, she was. It's a good story. My Colorado people are starting to get nervous. That she's saying, "Well, I'm looking for a church," and she said, "Well, there's a church near my house. It's the Unitarian Universalist church." And the lady in the laundromat said, "No, those people don't believe anything but loving people and helping others." And that church turned that phrase into their slogan after she joined it. Why is a Unitarian Universalist congregation like granola? When you take away all the fruits and nuts, all you have left are flakes. You know you might be a Unitarian Universalist when you know at least two people who are upset that trees had to die to build or remodel your church. You may be a UU if you work for a world where chickens can cross the road without having their motives questioned. We're at a very critical juncture for our congregation. We have come through the COVID remarkably healthy. But it's hard to know what's happening in the upcoming year. It's hard to know who really is here. And it has been hard to recruit people when we were all electronic. And going forward, we might still need to have an electronic component that tells people who they are. And this sermon will be on the Facebook page like all our sermons have been for 14 months or more. You know, you have friends who might be interested in this place. And every time one of our videos is posted, it has a share button. And you might share this sermon with someone to get a little flavor of what the UU Church is, who they might want to be a part of us. That was a bad sentence. We'll have to edit that out. You know people. You know people who would love this place. You know people who would come to this place, and they're dynamic people, and they would help change this place and improve this place, because we're under no illusions that we are perfect. Share information about this congregation in any way you can, because there are people in New Bern who need us. People who have been battered by restrictive faith. People who have been brought up in no religious training and have questions about what is it all about, and are afraid they might go to a place where they'll be put down. This is the place. Talk to your friends and tell them that you might be a Unitarian Universalist if you respect the differences between people and affirm every person as an individual. You believe that each person must be free to find what is true and meaningful in their own life. You believe in the separation of church and state, that moral and spiritual beliefs should not be coerced or enforced by the government. You may be a UU if you want a congregation that cherishes freedom and encourages open dialogue and questions of how one views the universe, and one where it's okay to change your mind. This congregation has gone for many years with a lay leaders doing services, and only for the past 5 or 6 years having a part-time minister doing 2 services a month. But even UU churches that are huge usually reserve 1 Sunday a month for the full-time pastor not to preach, because we always want many views coming from the pulpit. Because in the search for what you believe, you have to look hard at things you don't believe and understand why. It's not enough to say you believe in God or don't believe in God. You have to know what definition of God someone's working with. And you have to know, even if you don't agree with someone, you have an understanding of how that belief works for them in their life, so that you can have compassion for them. Compassion for their belief or disbelief. This is a precious place. And I think the people gathered here know that. But sometimes I think it's too precious. I remember there's been times in my life where I discovered an obscure musical band and I bought their first album and I just thought this was the greatest band in the world. And then their second album came out and they had a big hit and they were popular. And I said, all those new people, they don't really know what's going on. There's a kind of thing with preciousness kind of works against itself. It's like, well, if I share this precious thing, it will no longer be precious. But that's not true. By sharing, we have more people that we can talk to, that we can learn from. It's good for us, and it's something we need to pursue. And so when you have an opportunity to talk with the membership committee about how to invite more people in, take that opportunity and look at your own lives. And who do you know that should be here that isn't here? And who do they know? And who do they know? This church can grow. This fellowship can be larger. This congregation can be more. One of our principles is acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. And in one of my songs, I translate that as be who you are, but be even better. Because think of what this faith has meant to you, what it has given you. And if you keep it to yourself, it'll die with you. But if you share it, think of how many more people can have the experience that you've had being in this community. I often end my sermons with, may we bless and be blessed. And that has a meaning, because I think we all have been blessed. We have received things that were unexpected and surprising. And the response to that is to be grateful, but it is also to share it, to bless others. Because when you bless others with the hope and the meaning that you have found in life, then you too may receive blessings. So I conclude as I often do. May we bless and be blessed.